Why all human prisoners are treated as officers, regardless of rank or intel. Milo Thornberry had exactly 3 talents in life: being unremarkable, cleaning toilets that defied the laws of physics, and having the worst timing in the known universe. The first 2 had landed him his current position as Chief Sanitation Technician Janitor, if you weren't into military euphemisms, aboard the USS Improbable, humanity's first deep space diplomatic vessel. The third talent was about to land him in a whole different kind of trouble. Hull breach in Sector 7G. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately, the ship's AI announced with a calm that Milo found deeply insulting, given the circumstances. Non-essential? Milo muttered, elbow deep in the waste recycling unit. Who maintains your waste disposal? You ungrateful collection of circuits. The warning klaxons were already on their 3rd cycle when Milo finally extracted himself from the unit. He grabbed his toolkit and emergency space survival suit, the one with the unfortunate coffee stain that looked suspiciously like Earth's Australia, and started making his way toward the evacuation pods. That's when the hull finally decided to give up its long battle against the vacuum of space. Milo was sucked out into the void alongside several important-looking documents, someone's lunch, and a rubber duck that had no business being on a diplomatic vessel. As he tumbled through space, he had time for exactly one coherent thought: this is going to look terrible on my performance review. The USS Improbable had been dispatched to establish first contact with the Zentauri Confederation, a coalition of species that controlled a significant chunk of the galactic arm. Humanity had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel, and the diplomatic mission was supposed to be routine: a handshake, some speeches about peaceful cooperation, and hopefully access to alien technology that didn't break down when you looked at it funny. Instead, the Zentauri had opened fire almost immediately upon detecting the human vessel. No one knew why. Perhaps they didn't like the shape of human ears, or maybe they'd intercepted some Earth television and decided humanity was too dangerous to be allowed in polite galactic society. Either way, the Improbable was now living up to its name by improbably surviving a surprise attack. As Milo floated helplessly through the debris field, he activated his emergency beacon. The suit was designed to keep him alive for 72 hours, which seemed optimistic given that he was currently spinning at a rate that would make most astronauts lose their lunch. His only hope was that the Improbable would come back for him once they dealt with the whole being shot at situation. What he didn't expect was for a Zentauri scout ship to materialize practically on top of him, its tractor beam locking onto his suit before he could even process what was happening. Well, Milo said to no one in particular as he was drawn into the alien vessel, this day just keeps getting better. The last thing he saw before the darkness of the ship's hold swallowed him was the USS Improbable jumping to FTL, leaving him behind along with the rubber duck, which was somehow still keeping pace with him. At least he wouldn't be alone in captivity. When the holding bay door finally opened, Milo was prepared for many things: torture, interrogation, possibly being dissected for alien science fairs. What he wasn't prepared for was a small delegation of Zentauri officials bowing deeply as he walked forward in his coffee-stained survival suit. "The most honorable human officer graces us with his presence," said the tallest of the aliens. His voice translated through some kind of device that made him sound like he'd swallowed a kazoo. "I am Commander Vex Lore, warden of this humble detention facility." Milo looked behind him, certain there must be someone else there. Nope, just the rubber duck, which had somehow made it into his suit pocket. "I think there's been a mistake," Milo said slowly. "I'm not an officer. I'm just—" "Please, no need for operational security," interrupted a smaller alien with what appeared to be clipboard technology far more advanced than Earth's. "We understand your protocols. I am Assistant Plink, and I will be processing your officer accommodations." Milo stared at them. "My what now?" "Officer accommodations," repeated Plink, blinking rapidly with not 2, not 4, but 7 differently colored eyes. "Premium quarters. Nutritional supplements calibrated to human officer standards and recreational access as stipulated in the Pan-Galactic Prisoner Treatment Accords. Section 7, Subsection 42, Treatment of Command Personnel." Milo's mouth opened and closed several times, bearing a striking resemblance to the rubber duck that was now peeking out of his pocket. I don't understand, he finally managed. I'm a janitor. I clean the bathrooms. My biggest responsibility is making sure the captain's toilet doesn't overflow during diplomatic functions. Commander Vex Lore and Assistant Plink exchanged what Milo could only interpret as knowing glances. Of course, said Vex Lore, making a gesture that might have been the alien equivalent of a wink. Just a janitor. We understand completely. No, you don't. Please follow me to your executive prisoner suite, Plink chirped, leading the way down a corridor that was far nicer than any prison hallway had a right to be. Milo followed, completely baffled. I'm serious. I'm not an officer. My name is Milo Thornberry, sanitation technician, 3rd class. Indeed, said Vex Lore, sounding impressed. Very convincing. Your commitment to your cover identity is commendable, Captain Thornberry. I'm not, Milo began, then stopped. Something wasn't adding up. Why were they treating him like a captain? And more importantly, why look a gift horse in the mouth? Prison was prison. But if they were offering him the executive suite instead of whatever passed for a Zentauri dungeon, he wasn't going to correct them too forcefully. His executive prisoner suite turned out to be larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with amenities that would make a 5-star hotel jealous. The bed alone was the size of a small swimming pool, though shaped like a perfect hexagon for reasons Milo couldn't fathom. The ablution chamber is fully equipped for human physiology, Plink explained, pointing to a door. We've studied your species extensively. That's reassuring, Milo said, wondering exactly what extensively meant and whether it involved probes. Dinner will be served in the officer's mess at what you would call 1800 hours, Vex Lore added. We have other distinguished guests who will be eager to meet a human officer. After they left, Milo collapsed onto the hexagonal bed and stared at the ceiling, which was projecting what looked like a real-time view of space outside. The rubber duck sat on the nightstand, judging him silently. I don't understand, he told the duck. Why do they think I'm an officer? The duck, unsurprisingly, offered no insights. What Milo didn't know but was about to find out was that his experience stemmed from a fundamental misunderstanding that had been circulating through Zentauri intelligence for years. The last time they had captured a human, it had been Commander Eliza Rodriguez, who had famously escaped 3 high-security prisons, sabotaged 2 Zentauri warships, and somehow managed to reprogram the central security system of an entire moon base using nothing but a toothbrush and her extensive knowledge of outdated Earth programming languages. From that single data point, the Zentauri had concluded that all humans must be officers of exceptional capability. After all, what kind of species would send anything less than their best into space? The officer's mess, as it turned out, was less mess and more extremely fancy restaurant with better security. Milo walked in wearing the clean uniform the Zentauri had provided, an approximation of what they thought human officer attire looked like, resulting in something between Star Trek and a circus ringmaster. Ah, the human officer arrives, announced Vex Lore from a table where several aliens of varying sizes, shapes, and apparent states of matter were already seated. May I present Captain Thornberry of Earth? Just Milo is fine, he said weakly, then added under his breath, and definitely not a captain. The assembled aliens either didn't hear or chose to ignore his correction. They stood those that had the physical capability to stand and offered what Milo assumed were their species' respective salutes. I am Gronk, Fleet Commander of the Ursa Minor Defense Consortium, rumbled a being that resembled a sentient glacier with eyebrows. Trill Exar, Science Directorate, Andromeda Assembly, chittered a small creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a violin. Bubbles, Admiral of the Aquatic Armada, gurgled a floating sphere of water somehow contained within an invisible force field. Milo nodded to each in turn, internally panicking. These were actual high-ranking officers from their respective species. He was a guy who knew how to unclog a toilet with minimal splashback. And what is your specialization, Captain Thornberry? Asked Trill, several appendages twirling in apparent curiosity. Waste management, Milo replied honestly, then realized how that might sound. I mean, I handle disposal of Sensitive materials? This seemed to impress them enormously. A specialist in enemy intelligence elimination, Vexlor translated for the others, nodding sagely. Humans are notorious for their information security. No, I literally just clean. Please, Captain, interrupted Gronk. Operational security is respected here. We all understand the necessity of maintaining one's cover. Milo opened his mouth to protest again, then closed it. He was beginning to realize that nothing he said would convince them he wasn't some kind of super spy disguised as a janitor. In the grand tradition of humans accidentally stumbling into situations they weren't qualified for, he decided to roll with it. So, he said, reaching for what looked like food on the table, anyone know when prisoner exchange negotiations might start? The table fell silent, and Milo froze with his hand halfway to a pulsating purple object that might have been fruit, or might have been alive. The human makes jokes, Bubbles gurgled eventually, his watery form rippling with what might have been laughter. Everyone knows humans never participate in prisoner exchanges. They always escape first. Always? Milo squeaked. Trilixar's violin-like body vibrated in what Milo interpreted as agreement. The incident with Commander Rodriguez is legendary. Did you know her? Eliza Rodriguez? Milo's eyes widened in recognition. The toilet terror? Now it was the alien's turn to look confused. That is not the title we know her by, Vexlor said carefully. We refer to her as the Phantom, or sometimes she who walks through walls. Milo barely suppressed a laugh. Yeah, well, on the Improbable, we knew her as the officer who somehow managed to block every toilet on sea deck simultaneously during her brief assignment. I spent 3 days fixing that mess. The aliens exchanged glances, clearly filing this information away as further evidence of Rodriguez's mysterious capabilities. What Milo didn't tell them was the rest of the story, how Rodriguez had been transferred off the Improbable immediately after the incident, but only to be captured during a routine patrol near Zentauri space. The official report claimed she'd been on a high-priority intelligence mission. The ship's gossip network, however, had a different theory. She'd been demoted to patrol duty precisely because of her plumbing disaster. Yet somehow, despite being what the sanitation crew called a menace to functional waste disposal, Rodriguez had escaped Zentauri captivity not once but 3 times, cementing the alien species' belief that all humans, regardless of their actual competence, were elite officers with extraordinary capabilities. As dinner progressed, Milo found himself embellishing his waste management expertise with vague references to classified disposal protocols and sanitation security measures, all of which the aliens interpreted as code for high-level espionage activities. By dessert, a shimmering blue substance that tasted like concentrated déjà vu, Milo had been unofficially elected as the leader of the prisoner group, a position he accepted with the growing confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea what he was doing, but was too far in to back out now. The rubber duck watched from his pocket, the only witness to his escalating deception. 3 days into his captivity, Milo had established a routine: breakfast with his fellow officer, prisoners, exercise in the surprisingly well-equipped detention facility gym, lunch, an afternoon of planning his theoretical escape, which mostly involved staring at ventilation shafts and wondering if he could fit, and dinner followed by what the Zentauri called strategic recreation, basically board games with absurdly complicated rules. He was just finishing his morning protein supplement, which tasted suspiciously like the cleaning solution he used on particularly stubborn bathroom stains, when Vexlor entered his quarters without knocking. Captain Thornberry, the warden said urgently, a situation has developed that requires your immediate attention. Milo nearly choked on his drink. My attention? What could possibly require my attention in a prison where I'm the prisoner? New arrivals, Vexlor explained, his facial appendages twitching in what Milo had come to recognize as anxiety. Human officers. Actual officers. The bottom dropped out of Milo's stomach. Actual officers. From where? The USS Improbable. Your vessel has sent a recovery team that was intercepted by our patrols. Milo's mind raced. The Improbable had come back for him. But now they'd been captured too, and his whole Captain Thornberry charade was about to collapse spectacularly. "How many?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "3. They identified themselves as Lieutenant Commander Davis, Lieutenant Quinn, and Ensign Rodriguez." "Rodriguez?" Milo's eyebrows shot up. "Any relation to Commander Eliza Rodriguez?" Her younger sibling, Vex Lore, confirmed. "We have placed them in isolation pending your advice." "My advice?" Milo repeated blankly. "Yes. As the senior human officer present, protocol dictates you should determine how we process these new prisoners." Milo stared at Vex Lore, then at the rubber duck that had become his unofficial confidant, then back at Vex Lore. "Let me get this straight. You want me, your prisoner, to tell you how to deal with other prisoners from my own ship?" "It is unusual," Vex Lore admitted. "But the Zentauri High Command respects the chain of command, even among adversaries. And you are clearly the highest-ranking human present." Milo took a deep breath. This was his chance not just to maintain his cover, but potentially to orchestrate an escape. The real officers would expose him instantly unless he controlled their first meeting. "I'll need to see them immediately," he said with what he hoped was authoritative crispness. "Alone." Vex Lore hesitated. "That is against standard protocol." "So is consulting a prisoner about other prisoners," Milo countered. "Besides, I need to verify their identities. They could be spies." He had no idea if that made any sense, but it sounded appropriately paranoid for a high-ranking officer. To his surprise, Vex Lore agreed. "Very well. I will have them brought to the secure conference room. You have 20 minutes with them." As soon as Vex Lore left, Milo began pacing frantically. "This is bad," he told the rubber duck. "They're going to blow my cover, and then I'll lose all my fancy captain privileges. I'll be lucky if they don't throw me in the actual prison section." The duck, as always, maintained a stoic silence. Milo needed a plan, and fast. He'd spent enough time around officers to know how they talked, how they carried themselves. He just needed to convince the real officers to play along until they could all escape together. 10 minutes later, he was escorted to the secure conference room. Lieutenant Commander Davis, Lieutenant Quinn, and Ensign Rodriguez stood at attention as he entered, a courtesy that momentarily confused them when they realized the senior officer was wearing a janitor's patch partially covered by a gaudy collar that the Zentauri had added to his uniform. "At ease," Milo said, trying to channel every military movie he'd ever seen. "Guard, leave us." The Zentauri guard hesitated, then complied after Milo gave him what he hoped was a commanding stare, but probably looked more like he had something in his eye. As soon as the door closed, Lieutenant Commander Davis, a stern-looking woman with close-cropped gray hair, stepped forward. "Who the hell are you?" "Milo Thornberry, sanitation technician, 3rd class," he replied quickly, dropping the officer act. "And before you say anything else, the aliens think I'm a captain. And for some reason they're treating all humans like high-ranking officers, regardless of actual rank." "A janitor?" Lieutenant Quinn, a tall man with an impressively waxed mustache, looked scandalized. "Sanitation technician," Milo corrected automatically. "And yes, they found me after the hull breach and decided I must be a captain, because apparently the last human they captured was Commander Rodriguez's sister, who pulled off some spectacular escapes." All eyes turned to Ensign Rodriguez, a compact woman with a perpetual look of mischief that instantly reminded Milo of plumbing disasters. "That tracks," she said with a shrug. "Eliza never met a security system she couldn't break or a toilet she couldn't clog." "So what's your plan?" Davis demanded, clearly unimpressed with the situation. "Plan?" Milo repeated. "Yes, plan. You've been here longer, you've established some kind of rapport with the warden, and they're treating you like you're in charge. So what's your escape plan?" Milo blinked. They expected him to have a plan? Him? The guy whose 5-year career plan was to maybe upgrade from toilets to air filtration systems. But looking at their expectant faces, Milo realized something important. They needed him. For all their training and actual rank, they were walking into a situation he understood better than they did. And sometimes the person who knows where all the cleaning supplies are kept is exactly who you need. "Okay," he said, pulling out the rubber duck and placing it on the conference table like it was a critical piece of equipment. "Here's what we're going to do." Milo's plan was, in his own words, probably the stupidest thing anyone has ever come up with, which is exactly why it might work. The real officers had been skeptical at first, but after he'd explained the Zentauri's peculiar misconceptions about human hierarchy and capabilities, they'd reluctantly agreed it was their best shot. The plan had 3 phases, which Milo had named after his favorite cleaning products for reasons that made sense only to him. Phase 1, Pine Fresh, create a distraction in the prison's environmental control system. Phase 2, Scrub and Shine, use the resulting chaos to access the docking bay. Phase 3, Toilet Duck, steal a Zentauri shuttle and get the hell out of there. "Are you sure this will work?" Lieutenant Quinn asked for the 3rd time as they gathered in Milo's quarters the following morning. "Absolutely not," Milo replied cheerfully, rummaging through a collection of items he'd been secretly accumulating. "But I do know that the Zentauri environmental system uses the same basic filtration technology as our ship's toilets, just on a larger scale. And if there's one thing I understand, it's how to make a toilet system go haywire." "That's strangely comforting," muttered Ensign Rodriguez, who was clearly fighting the urge to laugh. Lieutenant Commander Davis, who had not cracked a smile since arriving, simply nodded. "We proceed at 1,400 hours. Everyone know their roles?" They all nodded, even the rubber duck, which Milo had positioned as their mascot. At precisely 1,400 hours, Milo reported to Vexlor's office for what had become their daily strategic intelligence exchange, a euphemism for ban. Milo making up increasingly outlandish stories about Earth's military capabilities while Vexlor pretended to believe him. "Ah, Captain Thornberry," Vexlor greeted him. "I was just about to call for you. We've received communication from your government." Milo's heart skipped a beat. "My government?" "Yes, they're demanding the return of all human officers, especially you. They were quite specific about your importance." "Were they now?" Milo said weakly, wondering what game Earth was playing. Did they actually think he was important, or was this some kind of standard diplomatic posturing? Before he could ponder this further, the station's alarms began blaring. Environmental system failure in sectors 3 through 7, announced the prison's AI in what Milo thought was an unnecessarily calm voice given the circumstances. "Phase 1, Milo whispered to himself as Vexlor rushed to a console. "This is impossible," the warden muttered, his appendages flying over the controls. "All filtration systems are simultaneously malfunctioning." "Sounds serious," Milo observed innocently. "You know, I have some experience with filtration systems." Vexlor looked at him sharply. "You do?" "Oh yes, waste management, remember? I could take a look if you want." The warden hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Very well, but I will accompany you." This was not part of the plan. Milo was supposed to be free to move about during the chaos, not babysitting the warden. But adaptability was a janitor's best friend right after a good plunger. Of course he agreed. We should hurry. As they rushed toward the Environmental Control Center, Milo caught glimpses of his fellow officers implementing Phase 2, Quinn creating additional distractions by arguing loudly with guards, Davis mysteriously vanishing into air ducts, and Rodriguez somehow already bypassing security panels despite having been in the facility less than 24 hours. The Environmental Center was in complete chaos when they arrived. Zentauri technicians were running around frantically, as all monitors showed critical failures. "It's as if someone introduced a foreign substance into every system simultaneously," one technician was explaining. Milo suppressed a smile. The foreign substance had been his own creation, a mixture of food items, cleaning supplies, and what he hoped was soap from his bathroom that, when combined, created a phone that expanded exponentially when exposed to the specific filtration materials the Zentauri used. "Let me see," he said authoritatively, stepping up to the main console. With Vex Lore watching over his shoulder, he made a show of examining the readouts. HMAS, classic case of filtration matrix collapse. "I've seen this before." "You have?" Vex Lore sounded both surprised and suspicious. "Oh yes. Happened on 3 different Earth vessels. Tricky to fix, but not impossible." Milo started pressing buttons seemingly at random, occasionally making thoughtful noises. What he was actually doing was executing Phase 3 by sending specific access codes to the docking bay codes he'd memorized after observing Plink entering them earlier in the pod. A week. Went an allier. "There," he said after a few minutes. "That should stabilize the immediate crisis. But you'll need to perform a complete system flush and restart." He looked Vex Lore straight in the eyes. "It will require shutting down all security systems for approximately 3 minutes. "That is out of the question," Vex Lore began, but was interrupted by another alarm. "Atmospheric degradation accelerating," the AAI announced. "Estimated time to unsafe breathing conditions, 15 minutes. Vex Lore's facial appendages flattened against his head, a sign of extreme stress. "We have no choice. Begin the system flush." As the Zentauri technician scrambled to follow orders, Milo glanced at the chronometer on the wall. If Davis and the others had stuck to the plan, they should be almost to the docking bay by now. "I should check on my fellow officers," Milo suggested casually. "Make sure they're safe during the system reboot." Vex Lore was too distracted to argue. Yes, go. But return immediately after." Milo didn't need to be told twice. He slipped out of the control center and sprinted down corridors that were now filling with the expanding foam from the filtration systems. It was spreading faster than he'd anticipated, which was both good for the distraction and bad for his escape route. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with Commander Davis, who was supporting a limping Lieutenant Quinn. "What happened?" Milo asked, taking Quinn's other arm. "Guard got lucky," Quinn grimaced. "Nothing broken. But I won't be running any races." "Where's Rodriguez?" Milo looked around frantically. "Already at the shuttle," Davis replied. "She's got it prepped for launch." Together they made their way to the docking bay, which was blessedly free of guards thanks to the environmental crisis. True to Davis's word, Rodriguez had a shuttle powered up and ready to go. "About time," she called as they limped up the ramp. "I was about to leave without you." "No, you weren't," Davis grunted, helping Quinn into a seat. "No, I wasn't," Rodriguez agreed with a grin. "But I was thinking about it really hard." Milo was halfway up the ramp when a voice called out behind him. "Captain Thornberry." He turned to see Vex Lore standing in the docking bay, a look of betrayal on his alien face. "You sabotaged our systems," the warden said. "It wasn't a question." Milo sighed and walked back down the ramp. "I'm not a captain," he said quietly. "I never was. I'm just a janitor who knows how filtration systems work." Vex Lore's expression shifted to something unreadable. "Then why didn't you tell us?" "I tried. But you were so convinced that all humans must be officers that you wouldn't listen." The warden was silent for a long moment. Then, to Milo's complete surprise, he began to laugh, a strange, wheezing sound that reminded Milo of a vacuum cleaner with something stuck in the hose. "A janitor," Vex Lore wheezed. "A janitor escaped our highest security prison, sabotaged our environmental systems, and stole one of our shuttles." "Well, technically I haven't stolen it yet," Milo pointed out. "Go," Vex Lore said, still laughing. "Go before I change my mind. But know this, your deception has only confirmed what we already believed about humans. Which is that you are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of your technology or your strength, but because even your lowliest member can accomplish the impossible when cornered." With that puzzling statement, Vex Lore turned and walked away, leaving Milo standing at the base of the ramp, utterly confused. "Thornberry," Davis called from inside the shuttle. "Let's move." Milo shook himself and ran up the ramp. As the shuttle lifted off and blasted away from the Zentauri prison, he pulled the rubber duck from his pocket and set it on the control panel. "Mission accomplished, Duck," he told it. "Let's go home." The debriefing back on Earth lasted 3 days, during which Milo explained approximately 57 times that no, he had not received special operations training, and yes, his entire escape plan had been based on his knowledge of toilet maintenance. "So let me get this straight," said Admiral Hawkins, a formidable woman whose uniform had so many medals it probably counted as body armor. "You convinced an entire alien species that you were a captain, organized a prison break using cleaning supplies, and negotiated your way past the warden using nothing but the threat of asphyxiation by toilet phone?" "That's a very dramatic way of putting it, but essentially yes," Milo admitted. The Admiral stared at him for a long moment, then burst into laughter. "Thornberry, you're either the luckiest son of a gun in the fleet, or the most brilliant undercover operative I've ever met." "Definitely the first one," Milo assured her. "Very, very definitely the first one." But no one seemed to believe him. The story of Captain Thornberry's daring escape had already spread throughout Earth's military, growing more elaborate with each retelling. By the time he was released from debriefing, there were rumors that he'd single-handedly fought off an entire garrison of Zentauri guards using nothing but a mop and his wits. The rubber duck, which had somehow become the unofficial mascot of the mission, was now sitting in a glass case in the Fleet Admiral's office, labeled Tactical Advisory Unit, classified. Milo tried to return to his job aboard the refitted USS Improbable, but found himself constantly interrupted by officers wanting to hear the real story or asking for his opinion on tactical matters he knew nothing about. It all came to a head when he was summoned to the captain's ready room one morning. Thornberry Captain Ortiz greeted him. "How are you settling back in?" "Fine, sir," Milo replied cautiously. "Though people keep asking me about combat strategies when all I want to do is fix the recycling unit on B deck." The captain nodded sympathetically. "That's actually why I called you here. Fleet Command has been analyzing the data from your adventure. They've made some interesting discoveries about the Zentauri and their perceptions of humanity." "Sir?" "It seems the Zentauri Confederation has been operating under a significant misapprehension. They believe all humans in space are elite officers with exceptional capabilities." "Yes, I gathered that," Milo said dryly. "What you may not know is why they believe this." The captain activated a screen on the wall, displaying a bewildering array of statistics. "According to their records, humans have a 100% escape rate from captivity. Every single human they've ever captured has eventually escaped, often causing significant damage in the process." Milo blinked. "Every single one?" "Every single one," the captain confirmed. "And do you know why?" "Because we're all secretly badasses?" Milo suggested sarcastically. "Because we're all terrified of being stuck in an alien prison without decent plumbing," the captain corrected with a straight face. "Human ingenuity seems to peak when faced with potentially substandard bathroom facilities." Milo stared at him, then burst out laughing. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious. The Zentauri and several other species have attributed almost mythical qualities to human officers based on these experiences. And now, after your escape, they're convinced even our janitors are master strategists in disguise." "That's ridiculous," Milo managed between laughs. "Is it?" The captain raised an eyebrow. "You escaped." "Pure luck?" "Maybe." The captain shrugged. "Or maybe there's something about humans that these alien species recognize even if we don't. Our adaptability, perhaps. Our creativity under pressure. Our absolute refusal to deal with bad plumbing." Before Milo could argue further, the captain continued, "In any case, Fleet Command has made a decision. From now on, all human personnel in space, regardless of rank or position, will receive basic officer training." "What? Why?" "Because if the Zentauri and their allies are going to treat every captured human as an officer no matter what, We might as well ensure they all have the skills to back it up. The captain handed him a datapad. Congratulations, Thornberry. You're being commissioned as an ensign, with a specialization in, what was it you called it? Waste management? Milo looked down at the official commission, then back up at the captain. This is insane. Welcome to interstellar diplomacy, the captain replied with a smile. Where perception is reality and the ability to unclog a toilet might just save humanity one day. As Milo left the ready room, commission in hand and head spinning with the absurdity of it all, he couldn't help but wonder if the rubber duck had somehow planned this all along. Later that week, the Galactic Council ratified a new amendment to the Pan-Galactic Prisoner Treatment Accords. All human prisoners, regardless of stated rank or apparent intelligence value, shall be classified as officers and afforded full privileges as dictated by Section 7, Subsection 42 of said accords. The justification, as recorded in the official minutes, but failure to do so has historically resulted in greater property damage and security breaches than proper treatment would have prevented. And somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of Earth's military, a new training program was established with a simple motto that would become legendary throughout the galaxy: every human an officer, because the alternative is too expensive to risk. Milo Thornberry, now Ensign Thornberry, received his first official assignment 2 weeks later, developing a comprehensive training program on improvised escape techniques using standard sanitation equipment. The rubber duck was listed as his technical advisor.